Hi, and welcome to the show. This is Recovery Wednesday, and it is December the 21st, 2016. Our call-in number is 563-999-3581. Press 1, and that puts you in queue to talk to us. And we would love to hear your comments and your questions because that makes this your show. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. We are honored that you're here to be part of our conversation about this awesome process of recovering the truth of who we are, of living as true human beings, and the power of the presence of a human life. You know, some time ago, Disney came out with a movie that to me was an event that was one of the most important events, if not the most important event in human history. And many people question me about that and quiz me about that. It's like, oh, come on. But if you watch the movie Inside Out, you will see the teachings on how to heal and how the mind works in a format that can be understood by a 4-year-old to a 94-year-old. And it's a global event that's available. I don't know, Disney probably makes their movies in just about every language on the planet. That's a pretty significant event. And one of the main themes for me of that movie came toward the end of the movie, where the power of the presence of a human life and the recovery of our human lives, which if you hold a newborn child, you know just what a human life is. The power of the presence of that love was demonstrated and showed how an individual in the movie, the child in the movie, from the point where her life changed from the goals she had, the way she lived her life, the way she wanted to live it, till the point where everything changed, all of her goals being frustrated, she ended up in tremendous pain and trauma, to the point where she ended up stealing, she ended up running away, doing all sorts of non-human things. And then she comes to the point where she finally gets a wake-up call, comes out of her stupor of hostility and fear, returns to her parents' home, and tells the truth about her pain. And both of her parents are there in that connected space of love. You hear her take this deep breath and dissolve her pain, the core of healing. I can remember back probably 25 or so years ago when, after doing this work for a couple of decades and watching just monumental healing happen for people and wondering what's the common link, what makes this happen? And I think this is such an important key to understand. And what became clear to me at that time, and what became one of the core principles of this teaching, was that whatever I'm hiding from myself will run my life until I stop hiding it from myself. And when, in the presence of active love, I bring whatever I'm hiding out of hiding in the presence of love, because that which is based in hostility, fear, pain, drama, and trauma is not real. It is a reality, but it has no permanence in the creation because it does not have the underpinning of love. And when it's exposed to active love, then healing happens. The dissolution of the pain and the trauma happens, and human life once again shows up. Well, we talked yesterday about the film that Ginny and I had gone to see, Collateral Beauty, and the importance of this film, which to me, on 2 counts, we talked about one of them yesterday, I want to talk about the second one today. On 2 counts, it is a signal to me of critical mass, and it's getting out into the mass media. You know, just before Inside Out came out from Disney. Disney did a movie called Tomorrowland, and in that movie, at least in my brain cells, Disney confessed to what they had been doing negatively in the world with the media. Watch that film and watch come forward and speak about how they've been destroying people by this repetitive negativity. And then the next film to come out is Inside Out, Powerful Demonstration. Well, of course, as we talked about yesterday, if you missed the show, we'll briefly mention it. The question that Jeannie asks at the opening of each Why Does That Mean to Me Again workshop, and the lists that are on the board every time we do any kind of a workshop come from these questions that she asked, and primarily the first question is how many have ever held a newborn child, and then we ask people to describe the essence of the newborn. And we point out that these are attributes of human life, and that human life is the active presence of love. We are created in the image and likeness of love. And yesterday, almost verbatim, as we watched this, we both just looked at each other as the man who's lost his daughter and his great trauma is asked to think about his daughter and the first time he held her. And he speaks about how, well, as he kind of, settles into that question, he speaks about and responds with, well, I wasn't feeling love. I was love. That's the whole point of it. That's the core of it. That's the sum and substance. In fact, if you go back into the ancient scriptures, that is the key piece. And all the rest, as one rabbi once said, is commentary. All the rest is a commentary on how to achieve the recovery of the truth of being. And then the part that I didn't mention about in yesterday's show, because I was so excited about seeing this piece that to me signaled critical mass, was toward the end of the film, this man who once again is in great trauma, it's demonstrated. I mean, it's just coming out so powerfully in so many places. And throughout the film, he can't even speak his daughter's name. He just can't face it. It's so traumatic. And once again, when a person in his life is there holding the space, asks and insists that he speak his daughter's name, the floodgates of pain open, and he's able to process and come back to human life and reconnect where he has been disconnected and left the world. Powerful, powerful demonstration. And so we're here to reinforce those principles and to offer tools for moving forward in the understanding of how it is that we as human beings function. And we're honored that you're part of the conversation. Dr. Tim, I hear you in the background. How are you, young man?
I'm doing well. Let me come back to you in about 5 minutes. They're working on my thermostat in my office.
Oh, cool. Okay. Fabulous. All right. Well, I understand that Gail is with us. Hey, young lady. Hello, Gail.
Hello. I'm
Oh, hey there, young lady. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm fabulous. Fabulous.
Fantastic.
Enjoying being in Austin. It's been about 20 years.
Oh,
since
I
I've been
love
here.
Austin.
It's a nice town. Nice town. So what's on your mind today?
Well, I'll finish this real quick. I used to go on vacation to Austin with my best friend and her family. I've been to Austin 3 times. I haven't been there. It's probably been about 30 years since I've been there. But her grandmother lived along Lake Austin, which is basically the Colorado River dammed up. And there's a lot of boating. And we actually got to ride in the boat with Dan Pastorini, who played for the Houston Oilers. And this was back in the late 70s. So that was pretty cool.
I bet it was. I bet it was. So that damned Colorado River, right?
Yeah, that damned one.
It kind of changes the context. Isn't the English language interesting?
It is. It's very interesting. Very, very, very
cool.
interesting.
Well, you had shared a text with me. You know, we repeatedly ask people to, you know, enter into the process of developing a skill that, you know, probably has never been conceived of on planet Earth, but the skill of being able to enter into every nook and cranny of our mind, our emotions, and our genes. Learn to
Absolutely.
decode what is there and process through it. And you sent me a text a while back that was just an awesome piece of work that you did, where you illustrated the way that you've been, with the dedication you've had to your work, you've been developing that skill. And I wonder if you might share some of that.
I'd be delighted to share that text.
Awesome.
What I did, I was doing a worksheet on finances. With it becoming Christmas, I'd rather stay into, and I wish this culture backed this up, but more of the spiritual realm of the holy days, and celebrate the light during the darkest part of the year, opposed to running to Walmart and buying everything. So I was looking into my finances, and I canceled a financial goal, and for some reason, I don't know why, immediately what came to me, and I appreciate honing this skill, because it is quite the skill set to be able to write down what we feel now and what we see after, holding the space of love and then canceling the goal and inviting Ruka in. And I'm a very tactile person. That's one of my learning skills, or learning methods. And so I really feel things and energy moving around. And a lot of the comments, instead of better or relief, is more like, oh, my third eye chakra is going crazy. Energy in my sacral chakra is doing this, or I'm feeling this pulse. But I didn't really feel anything this time, and I kept seeing wedding receptions, like wedding receptions from the past that don't even mean anything to me. And so I'm like, what's this? And so I canceled the goal again and was able to tap into what I think to be a generational thing. My great-great-grandfather, well, what I saw, let me say what I saw, and then I was able to figure out who it was. I saw a horse laying in the middle of a street. It wasn't paved. It was a dirt road or street, and it was and I was seeing it from the angle of somebody that was also laying down in the middle of the street. And the horse was attached to something and couldn't get free. And the individual was trying, it was almost like I was in this person's body and seeing it from their angle. And this person was trying to get up to help his horse, and he couldn't do it. He couldn't get up. He was paralyzed. And I was tapping into his injuries, and he definitely had a broken neck and broken ribs. And he couldn't move. He just couldn't move and was feeling very helpless. And also, I got to experience the final, the feeling of drowning in one's own blood, and then the shakeout, the final shakeout or convulsions that happen. And
prior to death, you mean? And
then not being in the body anymore. And still feeling helpless and wanting to run to the horse and help, but now I'm, not but the individual is now ether. The person is now spirit and cannot do anything. And so what ended up happening is that the horse was still attached to a buggy, and I suspect that what happened was that it was early 1900s, the advent of cars, I believe that a car backfired near the horse. The horse got spooked and very upset. I'm thinking that, and somehow the man went flying. I'm thinking that he might have got hit in the face with one of the feet of the horse and went flying through the air. And that's the result of his injuries. But what I know about my mother's father's parents is that they were servants for a rich family. They got married in Paris. They had 3 children, and when they came to the United States, I don't know if they stopped working for these people or, but anyway, he was what they called a lackey or had a lackey accident, and the word lackey is basically a horse and buggy taxi cab driver. And I also suspect that he was probably alcoholic as well, and his wife was alcoholic. And what ended up happening as a result of his death is that she was left as a single parent of 3 children, and they were Catholic, and she had to turn them over to the orphanage. And I'm thinking this happened in New York City. I think they lived in New York City. I think they were turned over. The children were turned over to an orphanage there. And my great-grandfather, I know, had huge resentments against his mother, huge resentments against having to grow up in an orphanage. So I felt his rage. And then I felt the great-grandfather's remorse on what happened, as a result of his death. Yeah, it was very powerful. And to just tap into that, and based on finances, of course, that's going to, him dying is going to change their finances in the early 1900s. And for sure, huge release, a lot of release.
Powerful. So for people who are new to the work or aren't deeply acquainted with the principles, the core of the forgiveness process comes from understanding that in a time frame, and this is lab evidence from Harvard University, in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells fire, the max amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. Now, obviously, something has to filter. If there are 10,000 brain cells firing, something has to filter that down to the 9 bits of information that you're going to see. And what we discovered out of the first century Aramaic teachings of Yeshua is that goals are the filter. They're the driver that determines which data gets into conscious awareness, what data is moving at the highest amplitude, therefore, and creates feelings. And so the core of the forgiveness process, which makes no intellectual sense until you understand this about the mind, is that if the mind is using some sort of traumatic energy to produce the perceptual world that we experience, then by canceling the goal that is driving the process, the end result, the perceptual world based in just that tiny fragment of information, collapses. And when it collapses, you get to drop down into the hidden parts of the mind. Psychology is pretty well established for us that at least 90 to 95% of our mental processes are unconscious. In the Aramaic, there was such a deep understanding of that there is a suffix, and when you add it to a word in Aramaic, it reflects the fact that there is something from the unconscious that's determining perception, decisions, and behaviors. And so in the case that we just heard, what Gail has shared with us is that here she is in a perceptual world experiencing lack, and yet underneath the surface, that lack and the root of it is hidden. You go back to Yeshua 2,000 years ago who understood this, and you'll remember he said, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. How do you take care of the heart, and what does the heart mean? Well, what we now know, I mean, the Western world, we've labored not being able to translate that word until just a few decades ago when the unconscious was rediscovered. So now what we hear Yeshua saying is, take care of what's in your unconscious, for out of it are the issues of life. And yet, it's unconscious. We've been taught to stay away from that. Don't deal with that. Don't look at that. Don't feel that. As in the story that I told about Inside Out. You know, this girl's running her life out of these unconscious, painful dynamics and won't look there. She's got to be a good girl. She's got to be there for her dad. And yet there's all this pain and suffering going on under the surface that she tries to ignore and lives in her head, trying to be the good girl and keep dad and mom happy. And then you see the unconscious controllers in that film very graphically displayed as these cartoon characters. Inside Out is a cartoon movie. But you see these characters who are now running her perceptual system, guiding her behavior. In fact, at one point, one of the characters, I believe it was disgust says to anger, or anger says to disgust, one way or the other. These characters in her head say, well, you know, joy isn't here. Why don't you do what joy would do? And it's like, well, I can't do what joy would do. I'm not joy. Those unconscious dynamics can't do what human life would do, because they're not human life. They're fragments in many cases, as Gail's just explained to us, they're fragments of genetic memories that come forward, and until we can make the space to allow them to come forward as they are and develop the skill of being able to understand and decode them rather than it just be a mass of trauma and pain, which is where most people live, developing this skill and this ability when those fragments come forward. And we've got, you know, oftentimes what appears as people's thinking is nothing more than fragments of genetic memory, fragments of thoughts from the generations gone by. And so developing the ability to decode those things. And the way that you take care of the heart, where the issues of life are, is if there's something coming from your heart that's painful and traumatic that covers over your human life, you as the presence of love, when you cancel the goal that you hold, that whole perception collapses in on itself. And now if you have the skill and the ability and the willingness to embrace what's there, which is not always Dr. Feelgood, because oftentimes when those feelings come up, they come up as very real current events. But when you can do that, and then you've got the tools, you know, step 4 in the worksheet is bringing love present into the space before you go through that collapsing of the perceptual world and accessing the deeper hidden parts of the mind. And when those deeper hidden parts of the mind come forward and you can comprehend them, then you can start to shift those energies, because those are the energies, as Yeshua said, that run our lives. Take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. So if in there, in that unconscious part of the mind, and you listen to Yeshua, he says, I come to bring you life and bring it more abundantly. But if there's poverty there, and we never embrace the poverty, and you look at, you know, I really, really deeply, deeply acknowledge you, Gail, for the work you've done over the last couple of years since you've been introduced to this work, and of course the work you did for years in the AA movement, which has all been supporting you in developing those skills, but taking the leap to be able to take a hold of that, comprehend that, and start to bring transformation to that is just monumental and to me inspiring, and gives everyone an example of, that's what I can do. You know, when somebody says to someone else, well, what are you feeling? Oh, I don't know. Well, you know, what's going on for you? I don't know. Well, if we choose not to know, if we choose to keep it hidden, if we choose to keep it unconscious, what we refuse to come into conscious relationship with runs our lives. And so to access those hidden energetic dynamics in the presence of love is to begin to dissolve those things which are false but appear real. Fear, false evidence appearing real. And so, just fabulous piece of work, just awesome.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome, you're welcome. So anything to share in terms of the upshot? It's been, about 2 weeks ago you went through that?
Yeah, I think it was about 2 weeks ago. As far as anything outside of me changing, no. As far as finances are concerned, but I'm still working on that, and I know, with the holy days coming up, and I am tapping into canceling a lot of goals, and then also still doing that around finances. But the other two is where I've gone since then has been a lot of trauma around Christmas, and what some of the last wake-up sheets that I have done have tapped into the death of my grandma. The last time I saw her alive was Christmas of 1983, and there was a huge snowstorm, and I was looking in the rearview mirror and just had a gut feeling. I was 17, and was looking in the rearview mirror as we were leaving, and because we were trying to get back home in order to avoid another wave of the snowstorm that was coming through, and
right.
So I just had a feeling that was the last time I was going to see her, and they ended up becoming snowbirds. They had both retired, and were going to go down to Florida, and they did, and she ended up having a heart attack in February of 1984. So a couple of months later, she had a heart attack and died. And so there's a lot of energy around Christmas, and I'm going to assume that other people have a lot of energy around Christmas as well. It seems like when we get together, it seems to trigger a lot of stuff, and so that Christmas is coming up, and I'm releasing that. And the first Christmas that we had after my parents got divorced, my dad brought his new wife to the stuff that happens on his side of the family, and my mom had come down with me, and that was very confusing, very, very, very confusing. Our station had changed, now the new stepbrother and the new wife are the focus, and me and my mom have basically been pushed aside. So there's a lot of stuff underneath all this. So I'm grateful for the tools to be able to look at and, release all this stuff.
Well, based on that, the invitation that I put out to people is to notice around Christmas, with this being Recovery Wednesday, notice how much excessive alcohol tends to flow around Christmas. And,
absolutely.
It's ostensibly because of parties. I offer it's not because of parties at all. It's because people are trying to avoid the pain that comes up when they're in social situations that they have unconscious dynamics they haven't handled. And, the sorts of things that you're talking about there, when they're not dealt with, well, if I don't know how to deal with it, if I don't have the tools, if I don't have the skills, then all I need is a fifth of scotch. Then I don't need to feel it. And, of course, that fifth of scotch so disables the brain in a behavior manner that one just adds to and creates more trauma out of the circumstance, and it just drives people down the tubes. And what we're inviting people to do, if you happen to think of alcohol as a party game, we'll invite you to rethink it with these holy days coming up, with family gatherings. And, if it's a habit to go to the company Christmas party and drink, if it's a habit to go to the family gathering and drink, New Year's and all, if you're currently in that circumstance, I just invite you to consider, if you're a drinker, and I don't care whether it's just a drink or two or whether you get sloshed, I invite you to consider doing this whole season fully conscious, fully aware, without the anesthetic effects and the numbing effects of alcohol, and let yourself really, truly feel everything that moves in you, and feel it with the idea of, I'm not only going to feel it and try to avoid it, which is what most people do, but I'm going to allow myself to feel it, and I'm going to allow myself to understand it. I'm going to allow myself, as Gail just gave us the example, to decode these things that, again, if we don't come into conscious relationship with them, they run our lives. So it's a perfect segue into that invitation with the Holy Days being here. I invite everybody to consider, what if you went through the whole thing without touching a drop? And just see what happens for you if that's not your habit. And if it is your habit, congratulations. Any thoughts in that regard?
Absolutely. That's what all the conversations are about around the tables, with all the meetings that I've been going to, is how to stay sober, through what we call the trifecta. And the trifecta would be Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. And it's, using the steps and sponsorship and going to meetings and learning how to do those things without having to drink or use any drugs or mind-altering substances. And one of the other things that I'd like to offer as well, the celebration this year for me, I was able to go to an AA Christmas party. I haven't been to this particular event in 4 years. Go and thoroughly enjoy myself. And we have a saying towards the back of our basic text, which talks about creating the fellowship that we crave. And being able to do that and be comfortable in my own skin and be able to just have fun and laugh and celebrate. And I have a tendency to tap into solstice. It's the darkest time of the year. I don't know if solstice is today or tomorrow, but it's the darkest time of the year, focusing on celebrating the light. And that's what they do during Hanukkah and the Hebrew tradition as well. And then thinking of the Christ child as being the light also. That shifts the celebration for me and puts me in a better spiritual place during this, is to tap into that light and that healing. And also something real quick, a lady that I sponsor went to her mandated drug group, counseling group last night, and she was talking about Inside Out as a film that they are featuring and watching and studying, and her talking about the worksheet that she has to fill out after watching this film. I'll send you a copy of it, but it's more of a psychological, clinical, therapeutic version of what we talk about when we talk about that movie. But I have talked about the Aramaic to her. She speaks Arabic because she had converted to Muslim, being a Muslim when she got married. And she is very fluent in Arabic. And when I talked to her about Ruka, I've talked to her about Ruka, but I've talked to her about Rachma, and she started to say it with the.
Right. Guttural.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I can't do that. But it was just amazing.
On people when I speak, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we were laughing about that, but she was familiar with the words because she's familiar with the Arabic, and that seems to be very close to the Aramaic. It's fascinating to talk to her and about what she has learned. But anyway, they're showing Inside Out and
that's awesome.
Yeah, and groups.
Seeing materials they've got. I love seeing materials that they've got around it. It's
yeah, absolutely. She was going to send it to me. She was
history. Cool. Fabulous. All right. Well, so really, ultimately, what I hear you describing and going to the AA Christmas party is that here's a group of people that are consciously creating a community of love a conscious, aware, straight, sober community of love. And how powerful is that? What a gift to give the world to open a space for that. It's a powerful, powerful thing to do.
Yeah, I'm enjoying
cool.
enjoying to be able to celebrate. I believe the way we are meant to celebrate this particular season, and being able to really have that community of love, being able to tap into that and support each other through this.
Fabulous. All right. Well, let's check in with Dr. Tim and see if he has anything to share and or any comment on the discussion, anything to add to it. Are you back with us, Tim? Did you get your thermostat fixed?
I'm here.
Oh, cool.
Well, I've had my own little segment of work and things getting stirred up, and some people heard a little bit last week about how I had a series of events happen when trying to move my mother and my sister where the movers no-showed. And so it turned into the last 2 weekends being a lot of extra work for me physically, and in terms of early mornings and late nights and work between the weekends. And the interactions with my sister at one point, and she'd been somewhat introduced to these tools over the past year or two, and it triggered some serious upset for her around feeling abandoned or rejected. And so she was doing some work on that on Monday. And then when I went to the group last night, we had our usual video and then discussions, and I kept offering to people the chance to do a worksheet for like 45 minutes, and people had questions instead of actually offering to do a worksheet. And then one of our birthday people said, well, Dr. Tim, you could do a worksheet in the last 10 minutes. So in honor of it being her birthday, I complied with her wishes, because I certainly have plenty to do a worksheet on. And so I did a worksheet on the frustration that had come up in response to my sister changing the plans and refusing to hire a second mover, and the miscommunications around that. And so my goal in the worksheet was for her to, my thought was that she was being selfish, and my goal for her was to be aware and respectful of the impact of her decisions. And so when I canceled that goal and went inside, I had a flash of 2 images. And one was when she was a newborn coming home from the hospital sick, and she was kept quarantined from us, and I was 3 at the time. And the other one was when our father was 68 years old and had to have open heart surgery. And the emotions from my time when I was 3 and I wanted to connect with her, send her love, help her heal or whatever, was sadness. And the emotions from the time around my father's surgery had to do with how my sister would get explosively angry if she thought that she was being told she was wrong or someone was discounting her opinion. And these 2 images came together in that insight last night. And I saw, even though I stayed open and loving and discussed things, I only said it once, what about the plan to hire a mover? And then when she pushed back, I just let it go, deciding it's her move, etc. And what I realized through my tears last night in the worksheet process and the tears of sadness was that if I had dismantled enough of that sadness about not being able to help her in 2 different critical times in her life, during the move on Saturday, I would have been able to say, okay, well, maybe you go ahead with that plan, but let's discuss some of the pros and cons first, because if we don't have a mover, then this happens, and there's less time for all of this organization, etc. And so it was a very productive worksheet for me last night. Tearful, but productive. Then this morning, I was doing more work on that, and I had a whole series of other emotions related to the fear of not being able to help people that I love, the thought that it was my job to fix or help people, and the grief at failing. And it went to times when I was 3 and when I was 8 and when I was 12 years old. And so I did releases on all 3 of those times, and it was, quite productive. So it turned out to be a birthday gift to me from somebody whose birthday it was in the group, because she said, hey, you can do a worksheet real fast. And it tapped into some real good old baggage that I wasn't aware I was still holding. And that old baggage was literally blocking me from being more focused and productive and loving in the present moment as an adult.
Nice piece of work. It sounds like, when you mentioned that, the predominant thought for you was her being selfish, that perhaps a worksheet on her being generous might be useful as well. Because if she'd been generous in that situation, the whole thing would have transformed. That might be another place to go with it.
All right. I'll look into that. I know there's going to be more there, because at the end of my worksheet last night, my goal was to do 3 more worksheets to dismantle my sadness, with the goal of then being able to stay conscious in active present love the next time there's an upset relating to my sister. So I'll add that to the list of worksheets.
Yeah. The thought comes as you're saying that, just kind of intuitively, that, and it might relate back to goals around yourself being generous, that here you are at 3, wanting to be generous with your sister, wanting to support, wanting to help, wanting to fix her, and yet you're cut off from her. She's isolated. You can't do that. And so the frustration of that generosity might also be a place to let loose of some old energy.
I'll explore that.
Cool. Awesome. Well, anything occurring in practice today to share with us? Or patterns that you're seeing that might help to open the space for people?
Well, I think with what time's left, I'd rather see if anybody has a question or a comment, because I've already spent most of my time today processing my own things and sharing what I just
Cool.
So I've only had one other session today, so.
Right. Awesome. All right, well, let's check with Jeannie. Jeannie, is there anything happening in the chat room? Anybody in the phone queue with a hand up? No? Well, then, there's lots of fodder here with what's just been shared. I can't imagine that there's anybody out there that's listening that hasn't got at least one quick question. So if Tim and Jeannie and I were in your hometown on the stage at your local library or university or church or whatever, and we walked down off the stage after having this conversation, if Gail were there with what she shared, such a powerful sharing, if she walked down off the stage, what would you be going over and asking her? They're the kind of questions that we're looking for, and I know that you've got them. So if you're in the phone queue and you push 1, that will put a hand up, and Jeannie will introduce you by your area code. And or if you're in the chat room, of course, you can write a note. If you're not registered in the chat room, then there's a simple registration process that will allow you to write there. You can't write until you've registered with Blog Talk. And or if you're in the chat room and you'd like to talk to us, Jeannie has the phone number to give you. Right, sweetie?
It is 563-999-3581. And we do have a hand that just went out.
Awesome. Let's say hello.
Area code 541.
Is this for me, Julie? 541?
Well, hey there, Miss Julie. How are you? Good to hear your voice.
Well, thank you. You too. Yeah, 2 questions. What was the movie you were talking about this morning? Was it the same one as yesterday? Collateral
The
Beauty?
same one as yesterday. Yes, Collateral Beauty.
Yeah, I'm going to go see that for sure.
Will Smith. Yeah.
Okay, and I also have had this thought, just recently that, calling the program Recovery and Recovery Wednesday and all of that, I'm just wondering if there's another word we could use for recovery, because the word sounds like we're recovering up something, in a way. I'm just thinking, I haven't thought of the word, but I just wanted to put that out. Maybe Gail would think of something because she's so involved with it. And I know, a lot of minds are involved in the recovery programs, and so it's not something to just pull the rug out from under everybody, but maybe some way of enhancing that word more specifically.
We'll open the space and see what unfolds.
Yeah. Also, I have had this really great idea, and I was thinking I should get in touch with maybe Mark Hatteras. Is that how you say his last name? Remember
Hatteras,
Mark?
that's the cape. Yeah, that's the cape. It's just Hatteras. There's no ER in there, but Mark Hatteras, yeah.
Okay, yeah. See how this feels to you when you hear it. Of course, you're in a different kind of a business, but maybe imagine being in the corporate structure and in the box of doing 40-hour plus weeks and in the workplace and wages earned by the hour and all of that. What if we had the 30 days in a month divided into 3 10-day weeks? And you would work 6 days and you would have 4 days off, which to me, I would say, balances the opportunity for a person to really live a more human life instead of being conditioned into slavery. And the workplace would still get 18 days in the month. And so, you could use your time more creatively and probably be a more effective, worker, producing results if you had that balance in your life. And I'm just thinking, I also believe if it were presented to corporate structure as an idea to implement, that they would attract more workers of top-notch quality wanting to work for them, because everybody would have these 4-day weekends. And they'd say, well, I'm working for you. You're offering a better plan here. And, because in my observation, I was in Silicon Valley teaching piano lessons from 1985 to 2007, about 20 years. And I saw people getting more hectic and more, having to put in, it was expected at these high corporate, high-paying jobs to put in 50, 60 hours a week, maybe even more. And,
right.
People were getting so tired and barely taking care of their families, et cetera, et cetera. And I just thought, something needs to shift. And that idea came to me. And, all we have to do is implement it in the marketplace, and others will follow. And I was thinking of Mark, because he's trying to do some new, implement the teachings into corporate structure. I believe that's what he's been doing. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, he's working on that. Why don't you get in touch with him and present that idea? The first thought that comes to me, though, is the underlying, that's all effect. The underlying cause of that is that one of the most common drugs, and people need to recover being in the presence of that drug, is busyness, is setting themselves up to be so busy. And part of that is when the employer says, I want more productivity, people can't say no because it fits right in with their idea of I need to be drugged. I need to keep busy so I don't have to feel, so I don't have to deal with myself. And so recovery there will open a space for all kinds of creative resolution around time. But I know that when we did, actually it was Rex and Michelle mainly that did the laws of living in the prison, and here are guys that are in their cells literally 23 hours a day. They're locked in a cell, and unless they have a job in the canteen or the laundry or whatever, they might get a couple extra hours outside of their cells. But in order to to move from the support group to laws of living, they were required to do 5 worksheets a day. And to a person, every one of them said, I can't do it because I don't have enough time. I'm too busy. So, to look at cause level, and as people start to deal with cause, then they can stop being so driven by their unconscious pain that busyness becomes their drug. So if one is going to move in one direction, I'd suggest bring the other one into play as well.
Yeah, I definitely would promote looking into it as deeply as possible, but I think that there's been such a conditioning, and then there's the pain behind the conditioning of, well, I'm nothing more than a slave and I have to fit in this box. When the human being starts to come out of the box, it's going to look for new ways of doing things. And I think if we offer a new box, even if people make unconscious choices to avoid pain, I think it will really be a critical mass kind of shift. And we can educate along the way also.
Yeah, there's actually no such thing as unconscious choice. When the unconscious brings information forward, it's making a decision. Choice is where we get conscious. And I can remember, one of the first, I started doing things like from shoveling snow to cutting grass when I was probably 7 years of age. And my first official job, I worked in a factory one summer. And I got really clear really quickly about what I would never do in my life, and that was touch somebody else's clock. That was a very clear choice for me. And I think that each person, as they do their work, will start to shift and change the whole game and the way they create their lives, including the way that their work hours go, whether they're working for themselves or working for someone else. And, of course, when one's doing one's purpose, there is no work. One just does what they do because that's who they are and what they are.
Yeah, what they love. Well, anyway, I
cool.
just think I think it's a great idea, and I'm going to promote it. I mentioned it to people, and I want to ask you actually. I know you're not in the corporate box. You've created your own and designed your own life here, but can you imagine the relief of just hearing that you could have 4 days off every 6 days? It's like a huge breath. Huh?
Jeannie has a thought there.
Okay.
Hold on a minute. I've got to mute here. Okay, better than that, I used to, right before I left working for the pharmaceutical company to join Michael, I worked 4 10-hour days. And so every weekend was a 3-day off, and every other weekend was a 4-day off. And 10-hour days is a whole lot easier than working 6. So there's several ways of doing that. And we got several texts have been coming in about the renaming, since you're still on here, Julie. And so one of them is possibly to call it habilitation, which means supporting the process of keeping, learning, or improving skills and in functioning for daily living, whereas rehab just means you're relearning stuff. That habilitation, is actually gaining new ways of thinking, which is perfect for what we're talking about. And somebody said unconscious choice, and I got another text that says that's an oxymoron. It's really unconscious decisions, because choices are always conscious from the spiritual side.
Well, thank you. I appreciate any little feedback like that. It helps me be a more effective communicator, so thank you. Yeah, rehabilitation, is that what the word was? Rehabilitation, that's rehab.
No, take the re off of there. No re, just habilitation.
Habilitation. I don't know, but it's a start, that's an opening. That is a good idea to focus on how we inhabit our lives.
Yes. Well, we'll keep the focus open and see what develops.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Go ahead and take another call if you have one.
Hey, lots of love and blessings. Take care.
Okay, you
Bye-bye.
too.
760.
760, you're on the air. Give us a name. Where are you calling from?
Welcome to Verizon Wireless. The wireless customer you called is not available at this time. Please try your call again later. Announcement 1, switch 4192-3. Welcome to Verizon Wireless. The wireless customer you called is not available at this time. Please try your call again later. Announcement 1, switch 4192-3.
A Verizon Wireless disconnect message coming through, so I don't know if we're still on the show or not. Somebody can send me a text if you're still hearing me. I'm not sure.
You're still here.
Thing just happened. Oh, good. Okay, thank you, Tim. I'm not sure how we got Verizon in there, but I guess they get their free ad today. So we're down to the last few minutes, and Jeannie got cut off at the same time as whatever happened there. I don't know. It all of a sudden kicked in like it was making a phone call, and then I got a Verizon wireless caller not available. Strange. So while we're waiting for Jeannie to get back and reconnected and see if we've got any other callers, we'll just mention that if you're ready to do the next level of work, we're going to be spending a week in Wilmington, North Carolina, the last week of February. And then we've rented this awesome, huge 7-bedroom, 6.5-bath house right on the beach in Oak Island, North Carolina. And so it'll start the first week in May. Jeannie will be doing a 5-day de-stressing for women, and then a 4-day women healing women. So people can do either the 5-day or the 4-day, or do both. And if you happen to register for both, then you get the day in between as a freebie on the beach with this awesome fresh and raw food and playtime. And so that'll be the beginning of the events. And then starting on March 17th, I'll begin a 9-day development event. So March the 17th through the 25th, 9-day intuitive development, and then we're going to do a 4-day codependence to interdependence, and then a 9-day Course in Miracles intensive, so as well as a 3-day personal code evaluation training. So that'll be the things that we'll be engaging in over the period of the 1st of March to the middle of April. Come and play. And we're down to the last few seconds, so we'll just let the show go for today and say, have the best day out of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. It's an awesome gift to give yourself. And we join you in recovery. Blessings. Bye-bye.